Welcome back to Ultimate Combat Radio. Mike Stidham here. The party continues.
Oh, man.
Right here on 1280 The Zone, talking a little mixed martial arts, and got a little heated there, Brandon.
It did. It got a little intense in here, man. I'm sweating. I'm still sweating. I have like an adrenaline dump. I'm ready to go home and lay on the couch now.
I got wound up about one certain topic that I tried to tell myself all day, don't get wound up, but I did. And it's hard not to. That's a pretty inflammatory thing to even mention.
Yeah.
It really is. I think Steven, I don't want to wrongly accuse him, but I feel like he hid behind the fact that he's just a journalist, and there were several stories going on in one story, and so he didn't adequately get to cover each little angle that So he got to do a little segment, kind of left you in the dirt, and then moved on to the next segment.
Right. It seemed like every segment left me in the dirt.
And he didn't get to finish the segment and dust you off a little bit. And one of those in particular is, the rape word, where to even bring it up in a sentence, you better have several paragraphs to clean it up.
Exactly. Man, I 100% agree on that. And so, yeah, it was a rough thing to read, and especially when he said, look, man, there's nothing here. I'm not going to say anything about it. That's what he told me before, So, yeah, it's a tough thing to and you leave a lot of people wondering, all right, what is the story behind that? There was no explanation for it. So
well, it's a long article, and those are the kind of things that stick out. And at the end of the day, you're left with your name and that word and something about that.
Exactly.
And yeah. That's
all right. Well,
not awesome. When you initially told me what the article was, likely to be about, I was excited to see it too. And then when you told me, maybe it's not going that direction, I thought the worst, you know, and you've had some crafty people against you before, and I really thought, oh, man, this is just going to be completely one-sided. So then when I read it, I thought, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But now that we've all talked, I'm like, oh, man.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Steven was out to hurt you
I
at
don't
all.
think so either. But I do think he was trying to sell magazines. Trying to get, and when you say inflammatory things, that's what gets distribution. Obviously they don't sell their magazine. They're trying to get readership, and at my expense, though. That's the thing that I have a hard time with.
Yeah, he was making a story provocative, and someone had to pay the price for that. I mean, he did a good job of making it sound objective, but it really, really kind of pulled people in a certain direction without saying, this is my opinion about Mike Stidham.
And at the end of the day, I'll say this, I like the guy, and AJ became very fond of him. We spent a lot of time with the guy over the last few months, and so anyway, let's move on.
If there's a redeeming quality, I mean, he did come on the radio show.
I'll give him that. It took a lot of, I think character. I think that's why I like the guy. Is he's a character guy. He showed up here and was willing to take his lumps, and he defended himself well. I felt he kind of held up his side, and
you left him hanging a couple of times.
Let's talk about some UFC, man. I know there's a big show going on tomorrow. And Barton Burdett, we brought you in here because you know about these things.
I do follow the UFC close. We should have done this first because we just covered all the best stuff. We really cast a shadow over such a big card tomorrow night.
Well, let's talk about the big card. What's going on in it?
The big story is Jon Jones is defending his belt against Rampage Jackson. Rampage, is polarizing. He wants his belt back.
Polarizing. Those guys that polarize.
You know any guys like that?
I've heard of a few guys in this sport being like that.
Bart, I'm going to the show tomorrow. What is the fight that I should be most excited for?
Well,
is it the main event?
The main event's not really up for grabs, in my opinion. Jon Jones is walking out with the belt, but it's always a treat to see two guys like that get in the cage together.
The original card had Matt Hughes against
Diego Sanchez.
That's a fight I was excited.
Is that
to see.
No longer on the card?
No, it's not happening. That was the fight I thought was going to be awesome. They've got Josh Koshcheck fighting Matt Hughes, and I think that is compelling. I think it's an interesting fight, but Matt Hughes has just got so much experience. I don't know. What do you think on that one?
Would you pick Hughes for that fight?
Yeah, I think I am.
Wow.
I'm confused. Are you taking Koshcheck?
I'm taking Koshcheck. I'm going to go against you.
All right.
That just made it more interesting to me because I didn't give Hughes a chance prior
to
that. Yeah. But, a few months ago, I came on the show and picked fights with you guys, and I picked Hughes to lose, and you picked him to win, and you were right. So
I don't even like Matt Hughes, man.
I don't either. This is really throwing a monkey wrench in who I'm cheering for because I don't like either one of those guys.
Matt Hughes came to my show one time. I think we've told this story on the show before, but there was a guy named Travis Paxton was one of my favorite guys. He's now deceased, but he was at the show, and he stood in front of Matt Hughes, and Matt Hughes picked him up and moved him. And Travis Paxton turned around, and they were squaring off. And I see this going on across the room, and I go running over there, and Travis Paxton says, does this guy know who I am? And I was like, you should know who he is. And I picked Travis Paxton up and carried him to the other side of the room where he was safe to talk how cool he was.
You got to love fighters.
Yeah, it was kind of funny.
So, yeah, that's the co-main event. Matt Hughes is fighting Josh Koshcheck. I'm going to settle our score with that one, Mike, and then we'll have a rubber match. I'll be honest with you,
I'm cheering for Koshcheck, so I'm torn here, but now I got to have to kind of – I think Hughes is going to win, but I was cheering for Koshcheck. But
I'm
one of those.
Against you again.
All right.
Koscheck's one of the few guys I will
you don't like.
I would only cheer against Hughes. Yeah, Hughes most of the time I cheer against, but not this time.
All right. Who we cheering for on the other ones?
Right before that, you have this Rob Broughton, who I don't know much about, but he's fighting.
He's an English guy, Brit, isn't he? From England?
That I don't know. You tell me.
Well, based upon our just previous conversation, I'm cheering against him.
I think he's the guy with one undercard fight in the UFC so far, and he's fighting a guy named Travis Brown, who doesn't have a real well name yet either, but he has been tearing it up in the UFC. He's beat up some tough guys. He knocked out Stefan Struve.
All right, so you're taking who on that one?
I'll take Brown.
Taking Brown? And I gotta go against the Brit because, I'm just like that.
Well, Travis Brown's from Hawaii. They're almost the same distance. But.
All right, so now what was the other big fight that people have been talking about?
Isn't there a Diaz on the card?
Diaz is on the card, and Gummy. So now Gummy lost to the brother.
Yep.
And now he's fighting the younger brother.
Yeah, well, he lost to that fight, and that was here in the States, one of Gomi's first fights in the States, and I think that was in Vegas. And it was overturned to a no contest because after the fight, Diaz tested positive for marijuana. Like that had somehow helped his chances. And the Gomi was on the top of the world at the time. So
that is funny. I did pull up some information on Broughton. He says he's a British heavyweight. He's fighting 6'9" Travis Brown. So Brown's a big, tall guy.
Oh yeah.
And this is the biggest fight of his career. He was born with a condition that made his feet all ski-wampus. Like he wasn't even expected to be able to play any sports or anything like that. So it's kind of a feel-good story. Now I got to cheer
behind that.
All right. We got some big fights coming up here locally. Some of the guys from Mushin fighting.
Well, Jake Paul was supposed to fight Kyle Jackson, who just backed out and has been replaced by Bird Dog.
Boo. I don't like that matchup at all. I think it's a horrible matchup. Jake Paul has gone in a direction that I don't think Bird Dog knows about.
Everybody quotes that, Bird Dog beat Jake Paul last time, but
it ain't going to happen.
Doesn't matter.
All right, we're going to talk more about what's going on with the Mushin guys next week on Ultimate Combat Radio. We'll see you next week.